may be interesting now. If we could put on and maybe run some of the slides as we're now doing. This is the beginning of our arriving in Cuba. You're sitting there in the plane as we come in here, and I think if we about every 10 seconds we change the slide as I get out of the way.
Yeah.
Here you are coming in, talking. Here we are looking at Cuba as we come over this beautiful country, looking down from the jet. Coming in to land.
Your jet. You brought the jet.
Yes, but it was our jet.
Yeah.
It's all our jet. It's let's face it, we're all nobody owns anything.
On the jet, we were your guests.
I believe in.
When we landed in Cuba, we were Fidel's guests.
We were Fidel's guests.
Yeah.
Well, here we are arriving and getting off the jet and getting ready to wonder what kind of reception we're getting, which I must say impressed the heck out of me, because you were received the same way as the head of the Russian government had been received the previous week. You had Brezhnev. They had enough people at the airport and enough daiquiris to...
And don't forget that the ambassador of Canada sent his representative.
He sure did. And there was then we went to here's the airport in Cuba as we came in, and we had 4 translators and 4 chauffeurs.
That's I, isn't it? There,
that's you coming through there.
The white shirt and the white pants.
And the
white shoes.
I thought it was very appropriate. You had a red jacket, so they immediately recognized you.
Colored jacket, yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Here we are pulling into outside the air terminal, being met by the big black limousines at the class of society were.
But they're Russian-made, by the way.
Yes, I gather they're Russian-made.
Yeah, Russian-made.
They're very good cars.
Yeah.
And here we are coming into the driveway of the very humble little dwelling in this
marble walls,
in this classless society. This is the driveway into the estate that Mr. Smallwood was provided with by the Cuban government, which I thought was only fair.
Brother Hedges, the American who took it on the land. Well, they didn't throw him out; he just left.
Here we are getting our bags unpacked as the interpreters and the staff are gathering to welcome us into the mansion. Here's Mr. Smallwood looking out over some of the grounds of a little bit more than 2 acres.
Good heavens, you know what? I believe I have a bald head at the back.
Not at all. It's thick white hair.
What?
It's thick white hair.
Looks like a bit bald to me in the back there, in the pole.
Why don't you try a red wig?
No, I've never been worn anything false.
Here we are looking out over the estate, Joseph. As we wonder what we've gotten ourselves into.
The
behind
house is sort of Spanish style.
That's right. Here's a minor Spanish mansion. It must have cost. Well, he told us he could replace it in those days for $190,000, and we could replace it in Canada for about $800,000. It's pure marble. Everything is marble.
Yeah. Floors, walls.
Here's the grounds where we're discussing.
Magnificent lawns.
Yeah, we're talking with the director of the movie. Some elements of what as we see it, which we get into, and even the first day we got into quite a controversy about some of the elements, but he was a beautiful man, and the film board crew was certainly a fine crew.
He made a fantastic movie in Vietnam.
Yes, Yellow Skin. Sad song of Yellow Skin.
Yeah.
This is on our right is Mike Rubo, the director of Sad Song of Yellow Skin.
And the director of the movie we're making.
And I'm pointing out some of the elements that I didn't agree with his concepts of...
and I'm listening judiciously.
I must say, you showed remarkable patience. Here we are still in the controversy, and you're listening...
Looks like I'm speaking.
I think you're saying a few words. Here we are on the lawn, which is with all the royal palm trees they had beautifully landscaped on this billiard table-like lawn that stretched all around the house into the guest quarters and the garages and the stables. And here we are still discussing outside the house.
I still got that coat on.
Well, I think that you feel so at home that now here we are sitting discussing outside on the lawn. The next day's filming, because we've been provided by the Cubans with an incredible schedule.
We could go anywhere on Earth in Cuba. Wherever we wanted to go, we could go.
Yep.
Whatever we wanted to see, we could see.
Right.
Anyone we wanted to talk to, we talked to. And they helped us in every way.
And here's our small little, we're having a little bread and molasses and a cup of tea as we get ready for the evening show.
Not fish and brews.
Not fish and brews, no. But this is the dining room in the house that was set for about 7 courses every meal, including breakfast.
Yes, it was fantastic.
With four staff.
And in the center of the table, at every meal, 3 meals, there was cheese, Cuban cheese, about 6 or 7 varieties, and excellent cheese it is too.
Yes, I must agree. The communists make good cheese.
Yeah.
They got a great potential there with those communist cows.
Yes, those communist cows. Yeah.
But each night we sat at this table and we
reviewed the day's work.
That's right.
And anticipated tomorrow's work.
And in many cases we listened to the soundtracks of the day's recordings. And because we shipped the film back through Mexico City every 3 or 4 days, the rushes. And I brought back the additional 10,000 feet, and we filmed a total of 20,000 feet so far, and the crew is still there. We should have about 60,000 feet, so when the movie is made and released in October, it'll be a very interesting movie.
I'm amazed at the calmness with which you speak. 50,000 feet, the contrast of now and then.
Yeah.
When you
getting carried away there.
Yes, you thought that maybe 4,000 or 5,000 feet would be a reasonable.
Here we are the following morning, getting ready to leave, and the ex-premier, is making a comment with one of the translators, and the 4 black limousines have arrived. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're ready to do our tour of the first scene we're going to see of Fidel's Cuba. I must say these cars were very comfortable, all made in Russia. And they went in what we call assassination speeds. 1 car in the center and 1 car on each side and 1 car behind, so there was no way anybody could pick us off. And we traveled about 120 miles an hour. In some of the times.
At that speed, maybe to cover more ground.
Probably.
Less.
Here we are getting our first briefing. Mr. Smallwood and Mike Rudo, the director.
That's the chap with the light suit on the left over
right,
there.
And we've arrived, and we're now getting our first briefing because they briefed us every morning.
That's one of the cameramen sitting down at the end of the table.
Right.
Next to you there.
Right. And we're being briefed on what we're going to see that day and how we should appreciate it. This is the head of the university, the engineering university.
He was the dean of the School of Engineering.
Right.
I think. Quite a young man.
Beautiful man.
Yes. That's next to me there.
Right. You're asking him various questions, and he's answering them before we enter the university, which I still don't think compares to Memorial.
Well, it's only the School of Engineering.
But it's 10,000 students, which is the same as Memorial.
Yeah, much the same kind of architecture.
Right. The only difference is, of course, here's the, between the buildings as we walk in. One thing they don't have to worry about down there is heating.
There's no ground floor. All the ground floor is wide open space. And it's the floor above that begins so that you can walk right through all the buildings underneath. All kinds of paths and walks and streets through on the ground floor. On concrete, of course, all concrete.
Yes, it's quite an impressive way they built these things. Here we are meeting some of the additional members of the faculty as we go into the university, which is pretty impressive in the way I must say nature has certainly helped them because it's such a beautiful tropical island.
Yeah.
And everything is open and there's no heating problems, so there's no heating in the buildings. And
you don't need heat.
And most of them have no windows, so there's lots of air and lots of tropical plants, which I think is very beautiful.
Helps to cool it.
You know, which they built around it. Here we are with Che behind us, looking over.
Che Guevara.
Right, a tremendous revolutionary.
He's dead, of course.
Yeah, he was killed in Bolivia, but Castro agrees that he, more than anybody else, was more philosophically inclined, and Castro really saw him as a hero. Yeah. Although he didn't join Fidel till after Fidel's first unsuccessful.
Although all the people of Cuba regard him as a hero.
He's a beautiful man.
Probably South America.
Yeah, he's going to be certainly a mythology.
He'd be a communist saint.
Yeah,
if you can imagine such a thing.
Yeah. Well, we see his picture everywhere. Yeah. Later on in the film, of course, you'll see it.
Look at the size of that. It's tremendous.
Yeah. Well, they have it at 50 feet high in one of the buildings we went inside. You remember?
Yeah.
But we're both here agreeing.
Che Guevara.
Yeah, here is the...
Who's that with the glasses?
He's one of the faculty of the engineering...
Oh, at the engineering college.
And he's giving us... He speaks English, and he's giving us an answer to the questions we had, which you were pretty...
I pressed a lot of questions.
I was going to say, you asked some very embarrassing questions. Particularly when you suggested white sugar might create cancer. I think you blew the mind of the sugar combine very fast.
Yeah.
But this was, they certainly answered our questions very out front.
They did that.
And you asked everything you could think of.
Yes.
So did I.
Yes. And some of yours were embarrassing almost to the point of being rude, but you were blunt and Jack Blunt.
Well,
and asked, you know,
I had to play the role that we...
Well, it was a good role. It was a good role. It got information, which is what we went for.
Yeah, here's in the campus outside the university, as we're looking around.
Yeah, it's so brand new, and they're still building it. It's not finished yet. For the engineering college, they haven't built the playgrounds, the athletic grounds, and they're going more or less there, just back of me there.
Yeah, they're going to put a baseball field and the tennis courts and basketball courts in this area.
Yeah.
It's a very tropical garden.
Now, isn't this the garden behind the house that was the foreman of the nearby sugar mill?
This is just we just walked by as we got into this picture by the two chaps from North Vietnamese.
That's right. There were two students there from North Vietnam
who were playing ping pong.
Ping pong, yeah.
And
this is the garden behind the house.
The
house now is the home of the Students' Union of the engineering college.
Behind this path leads down to the sugar mill, because this part of the university was owned by the manager, not the owner.
The manager of the mill.
The manager, and the owner stayed there when he was visiting his particular sugar mill.
That's right.
There's 161 sugar mills. This is his house.
Well, this is the back door.
This is the back door of the manager's house.
Leading into the garden.
Which they confiscated. And sitting there are a bunch of students who sort of gathered and asked us, as you remember, a lot of questions.
Remember we argued and debated about the difference between socialism and communism?
Yeah, we sure did.
And I told them I didn't agree with them. I didn't accept their definitions.
Yeah, I think we blew the minds of the translators. But it was an interesting time. But they were very sincere, I must say.
They were.
And they wanted to know desperately some of the questions. And we asked questions of them, but we answered them as frankly as we could.
Yeah.
They were beautiful, beautiful people.
Yeah.
Desperately looking for knowledge.
Yeah.
And they gathered around us as Mr. Smallwood, sort of the word spread through the university that he was visiting.
And not only that, but they found that I could discuss the philosophy and the methods and the techniques and the history of communism and of socialism and of leftist movements and philosophies generally, at least as well as they could themselves.
Yeah.
At least.
Well, they recognized the fact that you were basically socialistic in your concepts.
Yeah.
And they appreciated that.
Yeah.
And they didn't think you were playing games.
Well, I never, that's upside down, is it? Is it? I never failed to make it absolutely and abundantly clear that I was not a communist.
No, I know.
Never failed, every chance I got.
No, I don't think so. I think that's the garden. That's part of the tropical garden of the area outside the university.
Yeah.
And you know, it's such a tropical spot.
Well, it's a tropical island.
What you're seeing there is the heads of the students listening to you. You're there in front, talking to them.
Yeah.
And you can see the students listening. I'm there on the left, or the right, as I listen to you. And behind us is this tropical garden. Those who are watching this on color television, of course, will see the tremendous colors that are in this film. Whereas in black and white, it doesn't really show up to the same extent. But the film will, when it's released in October. But you're making a heavy point. You've got your hands clasped as you make the point. And here I'm making a counterpoint, I think.
Yeah.
But they're all listened, and they certainly gave their positions.
Yeah.
And
but the ordinary human friendliness, Geoff, was really, you know, heartwarming.
It was. It was very impressive.
Yeah.
You know, they certainly have. And this is looking out under the building.
Oh yeah, I was way off the far end, near the steps down. Behind me are the steps to go down about 5 steps down to the ground level. But where I'm standing is the floor, the first floor of the buildings, which is not a floor, it's just an empty space. You can walk around underneath all the buildings.
And be safe during the rain system.
Yeah.
The rainy season, which comes in May and June.
Yeah.
And the open, the sort of what it means that the university and the bottom floor is all open, and everybody can just congregate and talk. And it's
everything that we're seeing here in these pictures were taken with an ordinary camera, but the same scenes were taken with the movie cameras.
Yeah, what we've done, we've taken still 35mm stills, as the cameras and the sound.
You might say snapshots.
Yeah, you might say.
Yeah. Not movies.
Although
the movies were taken of all these same scenes.
The photographer who did them might get very uptight if he said snapshots.
Yeah, I know. But that's what we'd call them.
That's basically what it is in Newfoundland. This is the part of the campus, the stairs they're leading up to the various buildings.
Yeah.
And all these buildings surround it. It's quite a gigantic complex of buildings for the students, and all open.
Yeah.
And a great feeling of freedom, I must say. If there was freedom anywhere, it was certainly in the university.
Yeah. Well,
where it always is.
If there's not freedom in the university, where is it going to be?
That's right.
Yeah.
Here you are having a chat with one of the members of the faculty in the grounds of the university.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's the first series of takeoffs from the film, and of course, as you know, we were recording and filming everything you were doing, and even the arguments that you and I got into, and I got into with the various communists, were all filmed. So the film should be itself interesting. I mean, Waiting for Fidel is, I think, a good title.
Yes, because we were waiting and waiting and waiting and wondering if we could wait long enough to wait on him, because the record showed that again and again and again, people who went there to interview him, that is to say, to do journalistic interviews, to write books and so on, had to wait weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And the most famous book of all, by Lee Lockwood, was written by a man who waited in Cuba for 3 months before he could see Fidel Castro, and then saw him only because he threatened to leave. He wouldn't wait another day. And then Castro gave him 7 days. He took him to the Isle of Pines, and for 7 days they went to this hotel or this resort, and a crowd around, colleagues and friends of Castro's. And for 7 days and nights they talked, and it was all recorded on tape, in a tape recorder. And Lee Lockwood had it all transcribed and typed out and sent to Castro. And Castro struck out 2 or 3 sentences altogether, only 3 or 4 sentences. And Lee Lockwood just put them back in again, and it's published in this book, which is, what's it? Fidel's Castro, Cuba, no.
Cuba's Fidel.
Cuba's Fidel, Fidel's Cuba.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
it's quite a book.
I still think, though, that, I know that the meeting you had with Fidel, and he was very warm in his greetings to you, but I think that when he asked us to put all the questions in Spanish, and some of the questions, I mean, they were pretty tough questions. Now, he was very reluctant, obviously, to answer those questions, and we have left all those questions on tape, which you taped when you were in Cuba, and we've left our crew behind, and you got the assurance from him that like Lee Lockwood did, that he would certainly make every effort to answer the questions. But it's going to be very interesting, as far as I'm concerned, having left the crew there, if he will now bring himself to answer your questions and the questions I left. Do you think he will?
He will indeed.
Do you think so?
My questions and your questions.
You think he'll answer them?
Mike, what was his name? Rubbo.
He's he's from Australia.
An Australian. He's the one that made the movie in Vietnam.
Right.
He has some penetrating questions, and if Fidel answers all these questions, it will be really quite something.
Well,
but Fidel is rather famous for his blunt and honest and sincere answers, even to embarrassing questions. And I think we'll get some very, very interesting answers from him.
If he answers your questions and my questions, I must say I'll be very impressed.
Yeah.
But I'd like to take a little bet with you right now. I'll bet you a dozen red roses that our crew doesn't get the answers to your questions.
Now, the crew may not. I would if I were there.
Well,
I just couldn't wait. I just couldn't wait. I had to get back to Newfoundland to get to work on my...
Yes, but you have left the questions.
And I just couldn't wait. I was there 2 weeks,
You were there
Geoff.
2 weeks, right? And twice he said that he'd see us the next day at 3 o'clock, and then he said he'd see us for all the following day. But the only reason with the reception, when you finally met the man, he knew that he wouldn't have to face the cameras, and you had, of course, laid on in your unusual way.
Look, let's face it. We went there just after Brezhnev had been there from the Soviet Union. And while we were there, the head of the government of East Germany arrived and got a tremendous reception. And then the day after we left, in come over 200 businessmen from Argentina, including the heads of 3 big American motor car companies operating in Argentina, who were trying to sell American cars to Cuba, Ford, General Motors, and I think American Motors. And so, you know, we really went there the wrong time, Geoff. Castro has his country to think of, and these delegations, Russia, East Germany, Argentina, you know, they really were more important than making a move.
Yes, but don't you think that, you know, when he met you...
Well, if he'd only said, look, Joey, or look, Smallwood, you know, you've come the wrong time. Why don't you call it a day and come back in a month?
Yeah, but we call his bluff, though. I mean, when you said to him, I will stay over from Friday, after 2 weeks, after we got this one short meeting with him where he didn't have to answer questions, and you said to him, I'll stay over till Monday, and instead of flying back direct on his jet, I'll fly back to Mexico City, and then back to Tampa, and then drive up. He still stalled you and said Monday. Now, we left the crew to call his bluff.
But look...
Yeah, but we left the crew, didn't we?
Look, Geoff, your jet came in from Montreal on Friday morning.
Right. After 13 days.
I sent word. He said he couldn't see us before Sunday.
Right.
Okay, now this is Friday.
Right.
So I sent word to him through the Foreign Affairs Department.
Right.
I can't wait beyond Monday morning, because if I don't go on the jet today, Friday, I will take the regular Air Cubana passenger line Monday morning to Mexico City, because there's not another one till Friday. So if I don't see Fidel on Saturday or Sunday, I'm off on the plane today. And the word came back, he can't see us before Monday.
Right.
Now, he didn't say why, but we found out why. 200, something over 200 businessmen arrived from Argentina to discuss the sale of American manufactured cars. And if the United States government, if Washington agrees to that, it means that that's the end of the American embargo.
Yes, but
my heavens, what could be more important to Cuba right now than an end to the American embargo?
Nothing, but the point is that we left Fidel, and we left him with all your questions.
Look, Joey, there's something terribly important coming up, and I can't do it. If you'll wait until Tuesday, I'll see you Tuesday. I would have waited.
Yes, I know you would have.
Yeah.
But the fact is, we left all the questions recorded in a special sound studio.
Yeah. He'll answer. I'm telling you now.
Okay. Well, the Newfoundland public who are watching this television show will have an opportunity to see me pass you a dozen roses.
All right.
Or you pass me a dozen, because I say...
What will I do with them? My wife is still down in Florida. What will I do with the dozen roses?
Give them Mrs. Templeton.
But I haven't seen Mrs. Templeton. No.
Well, send them to her.
Yeah, I could do that.
But I think the fact is that the questions you asked were pretty tough questions. I mean, let's face it, you asked about the toughest questions that anybody could write out, and so did I. Now, if he really has the guts...
He has the guts.
...to answer these questions, then the Newfoundland public are going to, within the next 6 months, to know that, because I'm going to pull that crew out, and I told them they could stay there for 7 more days, which means they got about 5 more days, and Fidel's got to either put up or shut up.
On now.
Yeah,
how many days have we got at this moment?
Right now, they've got 3 days left in this week, but I'll extend that another 10 days and still take the same bet, and the dozen roses, which I have a few, 12 people, I'll give 1 rose each to.
All right.
But the fact is that if he answers your questions, Joseph, I have got to admit that it'll be mind-blowing.
That's right. I said, what do I do with the roses? It didn't occur to me that the question might be, what would you do with the roses?
Don't worry, I'll find lots of reason to do with the roses.
Well,
let's see. Maybe we should see some more slides of Cuba, and see some of the places that we went in this somewhat interesting experiment. Here is actually the, I think, the showing where the Bay of Pigs was, the invasion of the Bay of Pigs.
Oh, in that exhibition, in
Right.
that museum.
That's right. This shows the landing. The Americans went right up this narrow neck, with one landing, and the other landing was there on the right. And the Cuban and Castro's forces came down in the pincher movement, as showing here. Now this is where they decided to invade, and there's only one road out of here, and they couldn't have picked a worse place. Even the American Joint Chiefs of Staff said they had less than a 50-50 chance.
Under a 50-50.
Which was pretty crazy, but they did it because they didn't want to bomb the other place they had selected. Had a large Cuban civilian population near it, and they wanted to make awfully sure that they didn't kill any civilians. So this was the area where they invaded in the Bay of Pigs, and when we went out there, as you admitted, I mean, it was much more extensive and large-scale invasion than we had conceived.
Yeah.
As we'll see now as we move on here.
Tanks.
They had actual big tanks. Here is one of the.
Yeah.
Here is one of the.
That's a truck. Isn't it?
The army trucks that were brought ashore to try to rush down through this road and carry the troops as fast as they could in towards Havana. But they got blasted out of the sea because they misjudged a lot of things. This is just one of the things. They have it on a sort of at an angle, and they've made a museum here in the Bay of Pigs, and they have on
things
display,
inside and outside.
and it's all American equipment. So that's one of the reasons they've done it this way, because to show the Americans it's all American equipment. In fact, even the car that we were driving in Cuba a few weeks ago, on it had tires saying for U.S. use only. So I don't know where they're getting the tires still.
Czechoslovakia, Italy.
Yeah, but it says made in USA.
Japan. Now what's that?
Well, here we are looking at some of the other displays.
But that's outdoors. isn't it?
Outside, yeah. And this is, see the one there on the left?
They have exhibits outside the museum
Yeah.
and so many inside.
Right. Well, this one is part of the sort of the.
Have you got is there one coming up, Geoff, of us out in the bay itself?
Yes, there's one
on
of
the
us,
beach?
and also in the museum, showing us. Here's the carrier, one of the carriers that were blown up,
Yeah.
and it's there as a sort of an exhibition. This is outside the museum,
Yeah.
and then we go in the museum, and then we go out of the museum into the beach itself. Here is showing the various location of where
That's
they came
the
from.
island.
Yeah, they came
that's
from.
the Cuba island,
Right.
and that line
Right.
from the bottom up toward Cuba
Right.
is where the ship sailed from,
The invasion,
the invasion ship,
Right.
and
and where the training was in Guatemala
now up on the top of the picture, that piece of land
is Miami.
is Florida.
Right.
And you see the line coming down from that and hitting that piece of land over on the left there. That's where they came and landed and trained.
Right.
But where they took off from is over on the right by ship and came up and hit Cuba there in Bay of Pigs.
They hired 5 ships from a Cuban freighting line, which was anti-Fidel, and they used these ships for the invasion. They were hired by the CIA and paid off by the CIA, and this is where they brought the invasion in.
Yeah.
And we go on now into the other pictures. Here we're looking at the actual pictures of some of the dead and the maimed in the museum. They have
And
photographs
we
of them.
saw a photograph of the poor fellow who was killed.
Yeah,
and before he died, as he was dying, he's bleeding, badly wounded. He took the blood, his own blood, and wrote the word Fidel.
Right. Maybe he was going to say something else and died too soon.
Oh no.
But anyway, he's a
Wasn't gonna
hero.
say.
Here are some of the children who were killed,
Yeah.
and in the invasion,
Yeah.
and or had parts of their suffered some severe wounds.
Yeah.
This lady was killed,
Yeah.
and here are some of the other children with marks on them where they were. And here are some of the tanks on the right. You see some of the tanks that are being destroyed on the ground, and on the left you see a couple of the badly burnt people in the hospital who were wounded during the invasion.
Before they invaded,
There's 100.
they sent in a flotilla of aircraft to attack the Cuban airfields
48 hours ahead.
and smash up any aircraft so that the Cubans would have no aircraft, and when the invasion would come, a couple of days later in the Bay of Pigs, there'd be no Cuban aircraft to attack them.
Right.
But they failed to destroy all the Cuban aircraft, and there were enough of them left to go and sink 2 or 3 of the ships.
Yes, but to give credit to Jack Kennedy called off the second strike.
Yes, he could have sent in more.
Because if the second strike had gone in, the invasion would have probably succeeded.
Yeah.
But the fact is it didn't, and thanks to Kennedy, and I think you got to give credit to the United States new administration, the Democrats. They wouldn't do it.
I agree.
We can go on maybe now
In
to the
fact,
next.
Kennedy had the gravest doubts about the whole thing.
That's right. He was
touch and go whether he'd stop it.
He was
they were
suckered
ready
into
to
it.
go as he was inaugurated and became president. The invasion had already been set, but hadn't happened. The date hadn't arrived, and he could have stopped it.
Right.
And it was only with real misgiving that he finally gave it the okay.
This is the bay. This is the actual bay where the tanks came in.
Yeah.
But the CIA hadn't managed to evaluate in their great intelligence departments that there was a reef off here about a couple of 100 feet, and the small boats coming in from the main boats ran ashore, and some of the men had to swim ashore. And that certainly didn't help the invasion, to say the least. Here is the actual area where some of the other men landed, outside the reef, came in around here. And you'll see there's a breakwater.
Now here's where most of them landed.
Yeah.
And I took off my shoes and socks to walk out, so I could have it to say that I'd actually paddled. I'd waded in the Bay of Pigs.
I must say I was very impressed when the first 20 feet you walked in the water.
Yeah.
Then I found there was a sandbar right under it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here you are deciding whether if you would select this area for your invasion.
Yeah.
I gather there was
I made a speech there.
Yeah.
And the movie cameras did it and got the sound, my voice. I said, here is the Bay of Pigs. Here is where the Bay of Pigs invasion took place. There have been 2 invasions of Cuba in the last 20 years. One was a terrible failure. That was the one here in the Bay of Pigs. The other was a sensational success, the one when Fidel Castro invaded Cuba from Mexico in a small boat with 82 men to start a revolution.
Yeah. Of the 82 men, only 14 managed to get into the mountains, and from that 14 was the base of the revolution, which is really remarkable.
Obviously, 2 years or more up in the mountains.
Yeah.
Where's this, Jeff?
Here is a group of people who have gathered.
Where is that?
This scene is.
Where is that? Is it at the hospital? No, it's not. That's the hospital's all 1-story buildings. Remember?
Yeah.
This is a 2 or 3-story building. Now, what is that?
I think they're just a bunch of people who heard you were in town and came out to see you, see if it was for real. Here's the trucks coming down carrying the Fidel's entourage when he's meeting the East German leaders.
These 2 vans there are the cameramen, the television and newspaper cameramen, leading the parade so they could shoot back to keep the car containing Castro and the Chancellor of East Germany riding in the open car.
Wow.
It was fantastic. There must have been at least 1 million people lining those sidewalks for the full length of the parade.
For some reason they're not running these, and here he is.
Yeah, on the right is Fidel in the fatigue uniform, and on the left is the German.
The head of East Germany.
East Germany.
Coming through the crowds.
Yeah.
But let's run these in order as I've set them up. Here he is going away because we have lots of time, and we have these in order, which each one ends at a certain place. So let's take them in order so we can identify with them.
Yeah.
They're now out of order. This is Fidel in his fatigue suit, well tailored, polyethylene tailoring, and the head of East Germany, greeting the multitudes.
Yeah.
And here's the cars.
Oh, this is where is that?
This is just by the house as the cars are going by.
Yeah.
And here we are discussing the day's activities in our humble little abode.
Yeah.
As you're pondering our little hut, a little molasses and bread.
Our marble hut.
And you're now pondering the next project, which the interpreters keep throwing at us, which is pretty extensive,
Yeah.
of what we should do. And here is Mike telling us his opinion of the day's activity
Yeah.
and how he sees it through the eyes of the camera.
More like in the night.
Well, this is the
Planning
evening.
for the next day.
That's right.
Because
This
you
is,
see the electric
yeah,
light on there?
right. This is the evening time. This is about
Yeah.
7 or 8 o'clock in the evening,
Yeah.
as we're having dinner and having our usual end of the day conference about what happened during the day.
Yeah.
Here you are deciding to take a picture.
Oh, I'm taking a picture with my Polaroid.
Right, of one of the
one of the waitresses,
one of our
isn't it?
waitresses in the house.
Yeah. I took a picture of every one of the party, and the waiters and waitresses.
Yeah. Here you are telling Mike that you feel that the camera is and crew are doing fine, and that you're satisfied.
Yeah. But impatient. This is Mike smoking his
It's a Havana cigar. After every dinner, they gave us, passed
Often
around a
cigars,
box
yeah.
of these tremendous cigars. And those of you who have a colored set can see that from Mike's goatee, he's starting to get a deep red.
I almost wished I smoked when these cigars were passed. The best cigars on earth, of course.
Yeah, they're beautiful cigars. $5 a box.
There's my camera again.
Yeah, you're waiting for one of your films to develop.
Yeah.
I'm pointing out that after a few months it'll disappear anyway. Here's Mike telling you the size of his potentials.
Or something.
Or something.
Glass of wine in the forefront there.
Yeah, and
you
the
notice?
cheese in the extreme right,
Yes.
the huge
Yeah.
cheese dish, which was always on every table. Here we are the next morning, getting ready for our expedition.
Now, who's that next to me there?
That's one of the interpreters.
Which one?
Well, I don't know, they kept changing them so much
Yeah.
because they figured that if they got to know them, they might join our party, so they kept changing them every 3 days.
Yeah, they might cease to be communists.
The chap in the white from us is another one of the interpreters,
Yeah.
getting the door ready, and you're...
Oh, in the car, he's holding the door open for
right, he's getting the car ready for you
Yeah.
to take off for the tour. So that was, they really laid it on, as I must say, they couldn't have been more
Yeah.
hospitable.
Uh-huh.
It was really quite an interesting and fascinating tour, Joseph. I mean, they really...
Well, we'll never forget
they
it.
couldn't-
We've both traveled an enormous amount, Jeff.
Yeah.
We've both been in a great many countries, and we've had a tremendous variety of experiences. And the one in Cuba was unique. Although the one I had for about the same period of time in China, the People's Republic of China, was terribly exciting. I'll never be satisfied till you and I travel in what they call Red China. I'd like you to see that.
Well, I think I was lucky to get out of Cuba. I'm not so sure I got out of Russia, China.
You'll get out all right. If you can get in, you'll get out.
Well, I know what I've heard about China and what I've heard about their willingness to experiment within the system is interesting, because I was fascinated with the fact that Jonathan Seagull, for example, is allowed to be released in China, but it has not been released in Russia. And as you know, the
Is that
Cubans...
right? It's released in China.
It's released in China, which talks about the individual reaching for perfection and trying that man is made for not to just spend his toil to eat. He eats to live. Whereas the Cuban Revolution, as you're only too well aware, is very tightly tied to the Russian system and not to the Chinese system. In fact, Fidel has blasted...
He didn't make out too well with Mao Zedong or Zhou Enlai.
Well, Mao Zedong is,
Which I find disappointing.
Very disappointing, because the Chinese Revolution is only half as old as the Russian Revolution, and it's already demonstrating it's much more flexible and the quality of life.
The Chinese Revolution was on October the 1st, 1949, and I always had fun in China, and they used to enjoy it. When I would tell them that, our revolution succeeded on April the 1st, or just before the stroke of midnight, on March the 31st, or roughly April the 1st, and yours, October the 1st, 6 months to the very day after ours. In other words, Mao Zedong became a boss man China exactly 6 months to the very day after I became Premier of Newfoundland. So we are 6 months older than you. Our Newfoundland revolution is 6 months older than your revolution, and they used to get a great kick out of that, you know.
Well, it's true. And
incidentally, I used to add that Mao Zedong was born on Christmas Day, his birthday is Christmas Day, and mine is Christmas Eve. So I beat him by 1 day. But not in the same year.
Well, it's a fascinating combination. I think we should go maybe to some more slides and see some of the other elements of Cuba that we can tell the Newfoundlanders who are seeing and viewing us, because it really is an amazing country, and I think that some of the things we saw and did there, and the openness in which they exposed it. Here we are, of course, leaving our little chateau the next morning with the crew and the translators, and it was quite a crew. We had, what, four translators, we had 4 chauffeurs, and a 7-man crew, so we moved around like a battalion. The young lady there is one of the interpreters in Cuba, by the way.
What was that her name was? Catherine, no...
Vicky?
Vicky. Victoria.
Yeah, Victoria.
It's a strange name for...
She's one of the enlightened girls. In Cuba, you can get a divorce by simply going down as this godless country, and you just sign your name, and the divorce is granted for $40 in 3 minutes. If the wife objects to the divorce, it takes 3 days, and then it has to go through the channels, but there's no stopping it. She's divorced, and she's pregnant. The other 2 members of the...
Is she divorced?
She's divorced.
I knew she was married.
I didn't find that out the last day. She mentioned to one of our...
Oh, she's divorced.
That she's divorced, and she's expecting a child.
Oh.
And the other 3 members, except one of them, the other 3 members are also divorced. Because divorced, I mean, everybody down there, when you can go in and just sign your name and get a divorce, there's not much to marriage. Because there's no church service, they have communal marriages, everybody just signs their name and pays nothing. I guess the state gives it to them. But the divorces are 3 minutes, and nobody talks about it. Fidel, of course, is divorced. Now here we are out in the cane-cutting country, and this is the machine that will replace 20 cutters.
I'll tell you what it's like. Some Newfoundlanders may know what I'm talking about when I say it's something like a forage harvester that in a field of hay goes along and cuts the hay and chops it and blows it into a wagon along the side. Now here what's happening is the machine goes along and cuts the cane, which may be 8 or 9 or 10 feet high, and cuts 1 row as it goes, cuts it close to the ground, because the closer sugar cane is cut to the ground, the better it grows in the following season. Once they plant sugar cane in a field, it's good for anything up to 20 years. But of course, you can get better results by having a better quality, a better strain of cane. You can get better results by better cultivation. You can get better results by better fertilizer. But what they're doing now in Cuba, Cuban engineers from the Cuban universities, with the help of Russian engineers, designed this mechanical harvester for sugar cane, the first in the world. It was manufactured in the Soviet Union, but now they're manufacturing it in Cuba itself in a new factory they've built for that purpose. To cut the sugar cane of Cuba takes 300,000 men. 300,000. By 1980, all the cane will be cut mechanically by these cane cutters, and the grand total number of men that will work at sugar cane cutting will be 50,000. So that's a loss of 250,000 jobs, 250,000 jobs. And I was appalled, shocked when I heard that. They said, no, it's not quite like that, because a vast number, an enormous number of the 300,000 who cut cane are volunteers, including Fidel Castro himself, who goes out with his ministers and his deputy premiers and all kinds of high-ranking civil servants. They go out and spend a week or 2 weeks And everybody in Cuba volunteers to spend a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks in the cane fields cutting sugar cane, so that it won't actually be the loss of 300,000 jobs. It'll be the loss of maybe 100,000 jobs, leaving it at a net of 50,000. But the result of it all will be that Cuba will be producing 9, 10, 12 million tons of sugar a year, which is a vast amount for export. And seems to me very much that the great thing that Cuba has to gain from resuming friendly, normal relations with the United States is that the United States will put an end to the trade embargo. She won't stop goods, American goods, from being shipped into Cuba, and she won't stop Cuban goods from coming in to the United States, so that the United States then would become a market for Cuban sugar, so that Cuba wouldn't have to depend so much as she does now on the Soviet Union. And if she has two great countries, the two greatest maybe on earth, the United States and the Soviet Union, as markets for her sugar, it will mean more money coming back into Cuba, which will enable them to buy more machinery and improve the Cuban economy. So this cane is a fantastic, basic thing in Cuba, like our salt cod fishery. It still is in Newfoundland a very basic thing. Now there are 9 million people in Cuba and only 300,000 that have to cut that sugar cane, not only cut it but plant it. They've now got machines invented, by the way, to plant the sugar cane, and most of the planting has been mechanized, and quite a bit of the harvesting is mechanized, and it'll all be mechanized. Everything will be mechanical by 1980, so there will only be about 50,000 people needed where they need 300.
Well, actually, they told me there'd be 20,000 left cutting cane, but I think we might move on here in the cane fields, because as you see, it grows about 10 feet high. Here is the cutter coming towards us, cutting the cane with this incredible twin blade it has, which adjusts to the level of the ground.
Like, I'll tell you what it's like. If you can imagine a wheel about, let's see, about 4 feet in diameter, lying flat, down flat on the ground, and it goes around very fast. And there are two of them, one here and one there, and they go around very fast, and they're sort of tilted down a little. They're not parallel with the ground, they're down flat to the ground, or pretty flat, and tilted a little bit, so that the cut on each stalk is not straight across, it's slanted a bit, and they get it low down. These two wheels go around, and each wheel is made up of little blades that are about 3.5, 4 inches wide, and they're made of steel, and they're quite sharp. And I asked the question, how often is a blade, or one of the blades of the wheel, blunted or broken? Well, they said not very often, only when it hits a stone or hits some very hard substance. I said, can you just unbolt that section and put in a new one? They said, oh yes, they could do that.
This is a good show-up, because what amazed me was the amount, not only the amount of cane that came out, but
the offal.
Yeah, the offal which they feed to the animals.
Well, now look, another thing. When this harvester starts from point A and goes to point B, to the end of the row, they turn around and come back, but the thing, you see, that comes out over to blow the stuff up into the truck, that swings around, you know, and reversed, so that they keep coming back and forth from point A to B, B back to A back to B, back and forth, by just twisting the blower, so that always the truck is on the outside. And these trucks are loaded very rapidly, and that truck will take, that tractor will take several of these big trucks loaded with sugarcane in tandem, in tow, and take it to the sugar mill, which is not far away.
Here he is showing us some of the cane, and how close to the ground it's cut. And as you know, he told us that they're moving all the cane fields now, so none of them are on
On the hills.
On even land, so they can raise the cattle on the hills, and they can bring these
the flat level
machines
land where the machines can work,
and free the slaves.
And the hilly country, they'll stop growing sugar cane and use that for grazing.
One of the most impressive things I heard down there was when he said that as long as our people spend their lives with machetes cutting cane, we can never grow communists.
No. Communism can never be a success in Cuba while the people are chained to the old methods of cutting sugar cane. They've got to be freed and released from the slavery of cutting sugar cane with a knife, you know,
which is very true.
With a machete or machete. It's a knife about that long. Oh, about 80.
Well, he's holding one. You can see there between myself and yourself, where I'm squeezing. I'm turning one of the small pieces of sugar cane and showing you the sugar juices coming out.
That's right.
And the machete he's holding it.
You can peel. When the sugar cane is almost like a bamboo.
Yeah.
It's like bamboo, and it's almost as round as your wrist, not quite. And you can take that machete or a sharp knife and peel it around, exposing the sugary core, and then you can take and bite that, and it's almost like it's sweeter than sugar, really.
It's tasty, isn't it?
Oh, very tasty.
When they cut a few for us from the fresh, we picked up a few from the ground and started to sort of eat it, and they said, no, don't do that, because in less than 24 hours it dries out. So they cut us some fresh cane.
They got to get it rapidly to the sugar
well, the mill was more than about half a mile away.
Yeah. There were 120
Here I'm demonstrating
sugar mills in Cuba. They've done away with about 20 of them because they're antiquated and inefficient, and they've enlarged the 100 they had left.
Here we're
These mills are enormous. They're like as big as a big paper mill. These sugar mills are tremendous in size. And most of them have a little railway track running maybe 8 or 10 miles through the sugar cane fields, and the sugar is loaded aboard little rail cars, open box cars, and a little engine tows the cars, although they're standard gauge railway, which is quite remarkable. And nearly every sugar factory has a little railway 5 or 8 or 10 miles long, and there were over 100 of those railway systems.
Yeah, this is interesting. In the next, I think, scene where we're trying to really the left hand going one way and the right hand the other, we're simply dripping sugar out of that cane stalk, and it's amazing how much sugar just pours out. It's almost like
it's not sugar. It's liquid.
Sugar syrup.
It's liquid. It's sugar syrup. Yes.
And it's tasty, and it doesn't taste like sugar water. It's amazing.
It's pure, sweet,
tasty thing.
Sugar.
Yeah, and it's incredible how much.
I remember,
out.
Jeff, as a boy.
Here you are doing it yourself.
Yeah, as a boy, I remember going down on the wharf, you know, in St. John's, down on the waterfront.
Here you are tasting it.
Yeah, going down, and the foreign vessels, the foreign-going vessels that used to go down to the West Indies with salt-dried codfish and bring back molasses and salt and rum, would very often bring back sugar cane, because, of course, Cuba is not, well, those ships used to go to Cuba, but Cuba is not the only country in the West Indies and the Caribbean growing sugar, and the sailors would always bring back some sugar cane. And as a boy here in St. John's, you know, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, I used to go down on the wharf like thousands of other boys and bum a piece of sugar cane from one of the sailors, you know.
This girl who's looking at you is encouraging you to enjoy it, and
about 30% of the population, almost a third,
she's a typical Cuban
are
woman.
black.
Right.
Almost 1/3 of the people of Cuba, of the population, are black. They were Africans, you know, hundreds of years ago, who were brought to Cuba as slaves by the Spaniards to work in the cane fields, producing the sugar. The sugar, by the way, of all things, was brought originally to Cuba from India.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
India was growing sugar, and the first sugar in the West Indies, including Cuba, was brought there from India.
Yeah. This is
And the blacks were brought from Africa to work the sugar cane fields as slaves.
Yeah.
And all the blacks that are there now are the descendants of original black slaves. But they're treated as equals. They have exactly the same rights in the schools, in the hospitals, work, jobs, everything exactly, not a particle of difference. Although I did notice one thing. I noticed that while everybody, all the white people, that's, 70%, all the white people spoke, glowingly of the fact that the blacks had equality with the whites. Nevertheless, there is just a little bit of a barrier, and there is some intermarriage. Some whites do marry black girls, and some white women marry black men. In the main, and generally speaking, there is a little barrier there, and there is not as much intermarriage as you might expect in a society where they preach and practice racial integration and racial equality, and preach and largely practice an absence of racism, of racial bigotry and intolerance.
No, it's true. They don't seem to show any discrimination.
No, do they?
This is the entrance to another one of the schools. We might go through these because this particular segment we're recording is finishing off. We're having our usual briefing again of this school, and we're having lunch here now.
Judging, Jeff, I noticed by these pictures, judging by, we seem to be sitting down all the time and doing nothing but sitting and eating, or sitting and talking, or sitting and arguing. Whereas I suppose that would be the only chance the photographer would have to take a picture of us. We didn't stand still long enough.
This is in this restaurant, Lenin's Park.
Oh, yeah.
Where we were brought for lunch.
Lenin Park, did we go to? Oh, yes, in the club. What did they call it?
I don't know. But
beautiful, beautiful building. Oh, magnificent.
For $45, you can get a very nice lunch.
Yeah. We didn't pay anything.
No, but if you were cutting, cutting sugar.
We were 2 weeks in Cuba, and we were not asked or required to pay 1 single cent for anything.
I must say they wouldn't let us pay for anything.
Nothing.
This is the evening back in our little little shack we had, and with the lights the lights are all adjusted for filming, because we're filming this scene.
These lights up near the top of the screen there are arc lights for movies.
Well, the cameras are out of the way.
They're there because someone took this snapshot at a moment when it was being filmed in color film.
Right.
That's why these lights are up there, to give a fierce light.
I think you might, in one of these pictures, you'll see the camera just out of the focus, but we're doing all this in sound. Remember, we're discussing, you're making a point here, and you're discussing with the director, Mike. He's telling you his feelings about how things unfolding, and you're making your point, and we're it's a heavy argument that's rolling here right now. And as they'll find out when they hear the film, this is the nightclub they took us to.
The Tropicana.
That evening, the Tropicana, which
the Tropicana used to be one of the great famous nightclubs of the world. And it still is, but they've cleaned it up. Cleaned it up very much.
Yeah, the girls got to wear dresses now.
And it's enormously clever and witty.
It's a beautiful
and artistic
nightclub.
And beautiful. And the club itself, the building, the surroundings are just out of this world.
Yeah, it's a beautiful club. I must say that was that they really.
And you've seen them all, Jeff.
Yeah, I have, and that was as fine a show that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Take me back to my western halls. Let me let me feel